Nem lógnak be a cuccaim? Fick jag? Eller då? Amikor amit nem színe, vidám.
Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Desi. I just started my PhD in criminology at University Budapest. In the next 15-20 minutes, I'm presenting my findings from my MA thesis about university drug dealing, and I'm going to address how it's going to elaborate in my PhD. So, I asked everything I wanted to. Would you like to add something? I think nobody gets how widespread this is, and I'm sure half of the university is smoking weed. This from. This is a key quote from one of my interviews, which addressing the key element for this discussion, that university students are the major population of the drug users, and it's kind of an open secret, but it's without any kind of academic level analysis. And I think this way criminology kind of reinforce the image of traditional drug users, which you could see in Lisa's presentation today. There are very few number of empirical studies on this topic. It's mostly about users, university drug users, and in the Anglo-Saxon literature, it's more about prescription drugs. I found only one literature, a qualitative work which is focused on university drug dealing. It's Dorm Room Dealers from Mohammed and Fritzl. And I have some theories about why there's a shortage about stopping. For example, this scene is just not exciting. So everybody in the university knows what the university look like. It's not alien, it's not exciting, it's kind of boring in a criminological view. Also, it's just too familiar and too normal, and there is I think there's kind of a fear of the criminalization of our scene, the university and the academic. So, and I think that's why universities and researchers may be not interested, and they are not inspired to do this kind of researches. Also, there is this anti-targeting, which means that in the we can try to speak like this. So there is this kind of anti-targeting, which means that nowadays in the discourse of war on drugs, it's mostly the focus on the urban poor, and the academic is just following the government in this. And as I said, this is kind of an open secret, the relationship between students in university and drugs, and it's kind of easy to accept it and be satisfied that it's only part of the university culture or subculture, and it's kind of always been here and always will be there, and it's not a problem because the students just gave up after university. So this is about what I found in my MA thesis, and now I'm focusing about how I'm gonna elaborate this in my PhD. First, my main concern would be how the class structure defines and changes the drug dealing structure, because we know a lot about street dealings. We got a lot of ethnographies and documentaries and every kind of qualitative and quantitative researchers. But there is really not much knowledge about the differences between middle class dealers and dealers with middle class values and the traditional street dealers. Also, I'm interested about the concept of human, the idea of man. So, is it the dealers are kind of a homo economicus? Because we know that street dealers, they are mainly interested about the biggest profit possible, but we don't know that is it the situation with the university dealers, or it's more about friendship, personal relationships, or reciprocity. So my question in here, are the dealers in the university kind of capitalists in training? I'm also very interested in motivations and the factors which push or pull someone to this kind of career. What is behind them? What kind of motivations works? Is it about economic compulsion? It's about rational choice? Is it about drifting? From Varese, we know that in the middle class drug rings, there are usually missing any kind of violence. So I'm very interested in how are they enforcing rules? Are there any kind of rules? And if there are rules, how can somebody learn them? Is there kind of a mentor system, or you can learn drug dealing from Breaking Bad or The Wire? And I'm also interested in, is it a subculture in criminological way, or is it just part of the consumer culture? So in these questions, mind, I'm looking forward to your comments and helpings. I got some methodological and ethical challenges in the way. First and foremost, maybe the easiest way for me is to answer these questions, is to go in Breaking Bad and just start to dealing and cooking some kind of drugs. But there's the problem with Hungarian drug policy that it's kind of like this quote from Hangover that don't touch it, don't even look at. So Hungary got a very strict kind of zero tolerance drug policy. My research will be qualitative. It's a mixed, it's semi-structured interviews and narrative interviews. I try to approach dealers with snowball and networking, using my friends and acquaintances to providing rapport and just giving the message that I'm okay, I'm not a cop, I'm just interested in their thinkings and they working. Also, I'm only interested in low-level dealers because I think on the higher level there is no difference between. So there is no university dealers on the higher level, only in the low. But I'm looking both for dealers and users to know both sides of the story. And also I'm focusing on low-level dealers because they're easier to approach. Easier to approach. I think dealers, and I did some interviews with dealers, they are not impossible to get them to talk. As Zaj said in his dissertation, they are motivated when they are proud of how they doing in this business, what they are achieved, or in this scene they are maybe just sympathetic because they just want to have a fellow student with his thesis. So one key problem for me is the use of drugs, both mine or the participants, because it's against the law. And in Hungary, for dealing, you got 2 to 8 years, and if it's some kind of organized volume, it's 5 to 10. So what about using? Because I did one interview where the dealer was really insisted that I have to use something because that's how he knows that he can trusts in me, that I'm not a police, and also how can someone write about drugs if he or she don't know them, and I don't know what I could do about it because there is this attribute that you have to do drugs with us, you have to prove yourself that you know what it's about. And also it signal to show closeness, which is about the next question about methodological and ethical challenges. My research identity, because could it be or should it be done as a trusted outsider, or can I be not an insider? Because I'm exactly coming from the same schools, I'm watching the same movies, the same series, I got the same social background with these dealers, we're going to the same places, pubs and bars, so how can I be a researcher, and what roles should I take upon me? It's still a question for me. And there are also the question about the reputation of the universities. So I have to protect this reputation of universities, but it's not only an ethical question. It's also in it's my selfish interest because I need financial and professional approval and assistance from my university. So about calculated hedonism, it's an expression from Featherstone, and he used it about the postmodern consumer culture, but it's also in the criminological part of criminological knowledge for some time from Zimberg. He called it controlled drug use, which is not as quite catchy as calculated hedonism. So I've found in my interviews that this is kind of the self-definitions, the identification of middle class users. There are vertically, it's connected with the used substances. So on the upper class, they use cocaine, and on the working class and on the provincial, they use new psychoactive substances. So it clearly follows the class structure, and then horizontally, it means that you kind of between 19 and 25 or 30 horizontally, because so the problem with people under 19, said one of my interviewees, that they only using it to become cool, and they use it without limits. And it was really interesting because he was only 19, so I don't know how is it. And the problem with the older generation that they don't do drugs and they don't really part of this drug culture, that they socialize in the socialist regime where drugs were strictly not just forbidden, but you couldn't get them in Hungary before the 90s. So this drug culture means that you couldn't be an addict, because an addict couldn't be a decent university student from the middle class. So the most important attitude is knowing your limits and temperance and self-control, that you have a drug culture and you use it kind of in an organic way, which means, as one of my interviews said, that you only use drugs to make a good party better, but not for the drugs. And it's have to have some kind of, in the approaching drugs, some kind of respect and humility. And in these two quotes, so if you know how to use it, then there's no fucking problem with it. I don't understand how some people can be such idiots that they don't have a fucking clue what they are using. So, about this food, the first is from the 19-year-old boy, and the second it's from a sociologist student. It's interesting because she studied sociology, but she still thinks that people use bad drugs, new psychoactive substances, because they don't know what are they doing. So she didn't have some kind of I don't know knowledge about reality. So people do these drugs not because they are idiots, but because they don't have money for the middle class drugs. And it means that in this scene, the knowledge is one of the key elements that you have to know what you are using and what's the effects and the results. And that is why these new psychoactive substances, they are really say not forbidden for university students, but they got a taboo, which they are strictly and very strictly implying on themselves. So, unioning is a word which I learned from one of my interviewee. It means kind of so it's a special formation, and a group of friends come together and they're buying together the drugs, which means so you have I don't know 5, 10 friends, and everybody give him money, and then somebody with the connection go out and talk to the dealer. It's so I don't know any better definition for it, and I couldn't find it in the literature. And it's their use of words, so I think it's quite fitting. It's a very good illustration about the difference between traditional street drug dealing and university, because in the street drug scene, everybody buys their own drugs, so there is no community in it, and but not in the university. I mean, it's Hungarian university, so I don't know about other aspects of the world in this. But this system got three very big advantages. First of all, it's safer for both the customers and the dealers, because the dealer only has to deal with a very limited number of people, limited number and trusted people. So he or she doesn't get 30 guests a day for 3 or 5 minutes, which would be pretty suspicious. And also the users don't have to meet with the dealers, it's also safer for them. The second point is it's cheaper. So if you buy in bigger quantities, it's just economics. And it's also kind of a tool for the dealer to push you in this formation, to buy in this union, and he or she gives you a discount. Also, there are the problem of dosing, because there are some drugs when you just can't buy cheaply one dose, so you have to come together with a group of friends. So this system for the occasional user ensure an easy, available, and all a very comfortable mechanism. So you don't have to do anything, only giving some money to your friend, and that's it. In the end of the day, you got your drugs. But it's also got a big push factor for your friend who got the connect, because for him or her, it's a whole different business. This person gets all the stress and the risk to walk around the city with a huge amount of drugs and with a lot of money. And he or she has to meet the dealers. Hungarian dealers are famously not punctual. They're always missing their meetings. I don't know if it's only laziness or if it's a security measure, but it's very challenging in winter to get this. And the most important fact in this union that if you are the friend with the contact, you have to do this all for free. So this is why some of my interviewees who became dealers, because they started to do this for free, only for risk, and they just got the idea that, hey, why don't I do this for the money if I already took the risks? But in a Bertonian sense, they are always staying conformist. I consider myself to be a hippie in my worldview, but at the same time, I go to university, and so I need to have this other self as well. But I call my conformist self. It's said, but success in this world is defined by money. And this is a big problem, but it can't change it. We just have to learn to live with it. This quote is from one of the dealers who is still active, or he was active last year. And it shows that he made a lot of money with dealing, but still he chooses to have a legal job, because what's common in the university dealers, that they are usually nude and kind of planned this episode of their lives. They know that it wouldn't be a career for them, because in this low level and with the university background, they have far better opportunities in the legal world. And this is also an essential difference between traditional street level dealers and university dealers. These dealers said to me that they kind of think of themselves as the innkeepers or the customers in the prohibitions era. So they are not gangsters like Al Capone, and I don't know any other famous gangster. So they are just kind of working people who provide service. And this is very important that it has to be a pleasant service. So university students don't like to meet with traditional dealers. So, for example, one of my contacts said that so he wanted to buy some drugs, and they got a contact, and he went there, and it was a very big guy with tattoos, a gun, and a pit bull, and there was no problem. So the guy gave him good stuff, and so there was no violence, there was no harm. It's just that he feared from a kind of stereotypical dealer. So that's like university dealers kind of mediating between the two things. So all in all, they see themselves as not criminals, but as just students who got some pocket money from some kind of shady business, but they all knew that there are mostly no risk to get captured, and they're pretty sure about that they stop this activity. So usually they stop because relationships, or they got a legal job opportunity, and it's just better. So this was my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And if you got any questions or comments, I'm really happy about this.
Comments? Questions? Stretching your body.
Wrong moment, I've gone.
First you?
It's the follow the group of respondents that you had, because I found it's maybe interesting in how will their career unfold. Maybe there is a connection between criminal activities in a later stage of their life as well.
Well, this is my plan to follow them in my PhD, but all the dealers, except the one with the quote, are closed this part of their life. So yeah, so they already yeah.
How many people did you interview for your studies?
I interviewed 9 users and 4 dealers, and there were in the users. There were some people who just between the dealing and the using. So yeah, 4 dealers.
Do you think that's a representative number for the whole country of Hungary you're speaking for?
Well, it's not a representative. I know, but it's very hard to reach dealers to get to talk. So it was more about to explore and to get to learn about the basics.
Is this a first phase of your PhD, or this is the...
This is the first phase.
Right. So what do you intend to do after in the second phase?
Well, the second phase would be... So I'm thinking about getting interviews about officials like policemen, judges, or dealers who are not in the university. But it's still in progress.
About methodology, you told us when you were getting in touch with the dealers and they asked you to buy drugs and use it with them so they could trust you. But before that, was it hard to get in the scene or to get contacts with people who are dealing? How went that?
Well, at the first it was very hard because I didn't know any dealers. But after I just started to talk with my classmates, with my friends, with my, I don't know, and yeah, apprentices, and they just started to remember when they went to drugs that, hey, I got a friend who is in need of a dealer. So that's how it went. And after the dealers and I met, they always, so they wouldn't be so suspicious. So they trusted me. Only one of them said that I couldn't record his voice. And they were really... Sorry? Yes, yes. So they just wanted to talk and sing their side of the story.
So you just started to ask classmates and friends to know her?
Yeah, so I started snowballing.
Can you speak up, please?
From what you have observed, is it a male-dominated network?
Well, it was interesting. So I interviewed 4 dealers, and 2 of them were girls, which is not representative because the dealers usually males, but there are a lot of advantages for female dealers because usually Hungarian policemen, they just so heteronormative that they don't think about female offenders at all. In this
It's much more likely that you won't get caught if you walk around through the city.
Yeah.
So when people do need it up, they will send one of the girls.
Yeah, it's happening, and usually if they go to a party, it's the girl who takes the drugs.
You said that it's a big question, the reputation of the universities. And I'm just asking, are you planning to go out of the capital and ask some big universities? I know it's economically, it can be expensive, but what's your opinion?
Well, it's still a theory, but I think there's not a big difference between a Hungarian university in the capital or not. And also, the main problem is I don't have any contacts with universities outside the capital.
I'm still a bit puzzled by the concept university dealer. You say there's very few empirical studies on university dealers, but of course there's a whole lot of literature on low-level dealers, street dealers, and all kinds of other types of low-level dealers. Do you really think that your group of university, that the concept, has a future in the literature, in the sense that university dealers are in some ways very different from all kinds of other low-level dealers? Does this university thing give it some typical or unique features?
I think yes, mostly about because there's no violence. So I think maybe this is one of the key parts, because in traditional street level drug dealing, there are a lot of violence because of rules and turfs and enforcing them. And also it's, I think, another main difference is that the university dealers, they don't really do about profit. So it's not, so they're not capitalists as the street level dealers. But it's still theory.
Yeah. Would you link that to the concept of social supply, which is a concept that is often used to describe how people just share drugs or go get drugs for somebody else without any really monetary, profit-oriented motivation?
Yeah. So one of the analogy said, my theory is that they are kind of the person who goes to the pub and he or she takes all 4 beers and take to your table, but this doesn't mean that he or she is the innkeeper.
Alex?
I'd like to challenge you, if I may, on the point you just made about the distinctive feature of the university dealer being the lack of violence, because actually most drug markets are not violent. Violence is the exception rather than the rule in drug markets, because most people are involved in a consensual relationship with each other. Somebody has a product that somebody else wants to buy. That's not necessarily a violent relationship. And especially in cannabis markets. So, for example, we have the research from Sven Sandberg in his article on the importance of culture to cannabis markets. And that anti-entrepreneurial self-image protects cannabis markets outside universities from violent exploitative relationships. But what I think is distinctive of the university dealer is this time-limited aspect, that people are doing it in a specific social environment that has a time limit. And so with Fritz and Mohammed's work on the dorm room dealer, that comes out very strongly, that these people are just doing it while they're at university and have plans for other careers afterwards. So I wanted to ask you about the possible for a comparative case study in a Hungarian university compared to a Californian university, and what the different culture of the university makes to the different culture of the drug market and the different legal environment, both the criminal justice system being different in California and in Hungary, but also the modes of discipline that might be imposed by the university being different as well. And whether you see differences between your participants and Fritzfeld and Mohammed's on those bases.
Yeah, but also is the problem, I can't do a comparison with only one book on the other hand.
It's quite a detailed book.
Yeah, I know, I read, so it's a very good, but I think if I give my thesis in that I said, okay, I did interviews with, I don't know, 10 dealers, and on the other hand, I read one book, it's not the full picture. And I couldn't have...
What I'm inviting you to do is to draw out any differences from their conclusions that you can conclude from your study about the nature of dealing at the university.
Well, could you repeat it, please?
So, do you think that your conclusions about how dealing works at your university would be different from their conclusions about how dealing works at the university that they studied?
Well, there are some differences, but they are not essential. So I think it's kind of the same. So I only find minor details. So for example, in the dorm room dealers, they are more, or they're interested in legal drugs, for example, which is absolutely missing in Hungary. And also in dormant dealers, they get the big quantities themselves, so they drive to Mexico and buy them, which is not possible in Hungary.
Why did you choose universities and not, for example, colleges of vocational education or secondary schools, or where well, the structure must not be the same? So there you can have another comparison, maybe.
Well, there were some practical issues that in Hungary there are serious ethical problems about researching in schools. So in university, everybody over 18, everybody are adults, so they can give interviews and do as they want. But I can go to the school to do this. And also, I didn't have contact, and so it's more about practical issues. And also because what I knew about Hungarian dealers in school, that they are not in this for small episodes, so they are carrier dealers.
That's exactly what I think. I mean, it's not the school kids themselves, whereas at the university they may be student and dealer. So that could be an interesting comparison as well. Can't compare it with other countries. Another career path. Yes?
Maybe to refer back to what you said, because if I understood correctly, you mean that you don't agree with the assumption that university dealers are non-violent, opposite to regular street dealers?
Because regular street dealers are very violent.
Yeah, but then isn't it possible to, for example, assume, because most of the university dealers are also students, right? Or at least they engage with students a lot, that it's actually not about the, well, more or less violent or non-violent way between the drug dealer and the customer, let's say, but between drug dealers, because there is more of maybe, I don't know, a more cohesive system within the university, that you don't have this turf war, like, you know, this is my street and that's your street, and please, you know, don't come here because otherwise, you know. But that actually maybe in the university it's more cooperative because people actually want to help each other or something like that. I don't know if that's what you mean by non-violent, but
Yeah. So
maybe I missed that. But that's what I got from it.
yeah. So under violence, I mean not between buyer and seller, but between the dealers.
So in cannabis markets, even that is quite rare. And
yeah, but
these days we very rarely see street markets in cannabis. Why have a street market where you can phone someone and get it? Why do you need turf? You just need phone numbers.
Maybe it's because you meet them in other contexts as well. They're not only your dealer, they do sports with you, or they take classes with you. That may give another dynamics. Also, you need to find another word for this violence, because it's not distinctive from other dealing.
Eric Hammerstick also wrote an article about 5 mechanisms explaining why there's so little violence between people in the cannabis market, etc. So that might be interesting for you as well. You wanted to?
I think it's not about violence; it's more about trust. Because it's students, they have some desire for drugs, but they have a mismatch between regular street dealers. And I think the bond with a university or student dealer is needed for a better interaction. I think it's not about no violence, because students and dealers will also, but more a mismatch which invokes more trust between the student dealer and the student.
yes, it's. I think there's an economic expression that the shadow of the past and the shadow of the future, that they know each other for a long time and they know that they will be doing business, which is instead street dealers that are not that consistent, I think.
You wanted to?
I was just curious, in terms of spatial awareness, when you were conducting your interviews and receiving this information, did you find that your participants were more likely to engage with you in public or private arenas, and how did you deal with the methodology of that?
Well, I sent my interviews, my so so the ethical part of my study. So they, and that in there I wrote that it be anonymous and they can get out anytime and there were no any kind of consequences, and usually they choose the place of the interview, and it was, I don't know, there were some in dormitories, some in the at homes, or sometimes in restaurants or cafes.
Was that your question? Was that your question?
No?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a small PS to the non-violent character of the drug market. It's interesting to see that it was traditionally very non-violent in the coffee shops. There were never any fighting. But over the last couple of years, you see a lot of coffee shops being closed because there were fights, even lethal accidents, and coffee shops are being shot at. Particularly in Amsterdam, there's a wave of coffee shops being shot at. This is related not to the dealing itself, but to the providers, let's say, who are, well, let's say organized crime groups, which is not the word that I normally use. But so the violence comes in through the providers of the coffee shops. There is a new violence. It's a relatively new phenomenon. So it may change, this violence.
But those providers are very professionally organized, large-scale, industrial growers
Absolutely.
that have vested interests in
and competing groups. Yeah. Competing groups as well.
Any other comments or questions? No. I think you all need a break, please. Help me in thanking Adam for his presentation. So again, a little bit of a longer coffee break that does